We will continue our discussion of access control techniques in this lecture of CNIT 270. We are focusing on comparing different types of access control techniques. So far, we have discussed DSE based discretionary access control approach, and also we already discussed the role based access control approach. Next, we are going to discuss the MAC, the mandatory access control. Mandatory access control, or MAC, is a system to allow or deny access to private information in an organization. It's work in a hierarchical pattern. So this is how the pattern looks like. Each possible entrant is categorized under a special permission or clearance levels, or labels, as we can call them. And then for the lower level won't have access to the higher level. So basically, this could be confidential, secret, and so on. So these are examples, some of the labels over there. The whole team force must be divided into different categories according to their roles and responsibilities. The administration need to put a lot of effort at time of planning and information flow properly. So this is one of the important point over there, because the so it's a lot of effort goes into this. So basically, need to assign the labels and define the clearance levels and so on. But this would be only a one-time effort to set up things in order, and then once everything is set up correctly, tested, and implemented, it would require periodic updates to the to those categories, to those clearance level, those positions, and the role. So there is one clear difference between the MAC and the DSE based approach that we discussed earlier. The basically in MAC, the access control policies are enforced by the system rather than as the discretion of the resource owner. In basically, we saw in DAC that the owner, the creator is the owner, and owner sets the permission for users and groups in DSE. Whereas in MAC, the owner has no control over there. Once the content is there, the resource owner has no discretion on that. It's enforced by the system, basically security team or the system administrators, who control that type of access. So therefore, it's less flexible, and there it can become more complex. As we discussed, there is a lot of effort required at the time of the but it offers much more secure design, cybersecurity design, because it's focused more on ensuring access aligns with specific date classification and sensitivity levels, clearance levels, and so on. Because of this hierarchical design, this clearance based or label based approach, this is used in IT systems or security systems, which are processing very highly sensitive or confidential information, such as in the government agencies, in the national labs, research labs, doing lots of advanced research. So basically, in those type of areas, the MAC would be a good fit. The here we can also see that the use of the clearances or the security labels allow the system administrators to specify the level of confidentiality associated with the resource. For example, if the secret level is selected, so that means all the information should be only restrained to the members of that hierarchy only. No lower level should be able to access that. Basically, so that's one. The information is categorized into the hierarchies, which might be indicate the indication of the security level. So that's why in MSc or MAC, the labels, clearance level, hierarchies, categories, these are also all used interchangeably to indicate the access level. So basically, the classification or the group to which the information belongs is determined by the security category. So that's why there's a lot of work. Whenever there is a new piece of information, the administrators need to decide to which type of clearance level will it belong to. So therefore, a classification label is given every time in the file system, in the information system, when using the required access control, which is method that is often used by the military as well. So for example, confidential, secret, top secret, these are some of the labels in this case. So it offers high level data protection, centralized information, because honor has no control. It's the security team, the system administrators who will decide all that information. And then it also helps in the privacy. So the each person and device is given a classification and clearance level by the centralized team over there. So whenever there is an attempt or access to a particular resource made, the driver, the security verifier will basically check those credentials to decide whether the access could be provided or not. So that therefore it provides much higher level of data protection. But it requires, as I earlier mentioned, it requires careful planning, continuous monitoring in order to maintain the accurate classification of all users and resources all the time. So that's very burdensome, because since the nature of the data is very sensitive, that needs to be protected using these type of systems. So therefore, the continuous monitoring is required all the time. The It's also higher level of access control as compared to DSC and RBSC, discretionary and the role based, which provides lower level of protection. These type of systems provides very high level of protection. And the centralized information is basically, once after the data is created, it has been assigned to a special type of clearance level, then it cannot be removed from that by the normal users, except then this security administrator. So security administrators in these type of systems are analysts as well. They are trained to protect the sensitive type of data. So basically, they are not just the simple type of the normal security administrators that we'll see in organization. And they are very well aware of the functionality of the organization and so on. So they understand the complete nature, and if there are some changes required to some type of classification as well, then of course there is a complete chain of command which approves the change of the classification level, both from the lower to higher level. It's also very sensitive, from the confidential to secret, and then the more important and more significant is downgrading of some information. Generally, for example, top secret to the unclassified or unrestricted, or secret to unspecified or confidential to the unrestricted access, and so on. So these are some of the downgrades in the MSc. So in that case, again, there are policies. For example, in governmental, there are 30 years, 40 years, 50-year base. After that, the information is declassified. For example, recently, the data from the Vietnam War was released, and the what happened in that type of war. So basically, that has been declassified as well, and it's available to the public. And in some other cases as well, some types of data which CIA had, they were able to release it after 5 years for the benefit of the general public and for the purpose of the research, so that university researchers could work on that. So these are some of the advantages in this case: the higher level of data protection, the data is protected to a high degree. We just discussed. It provides a complete peace of mind to the team, to the organization, to the management, that their sensitive information is secure and cannot be compromised in any way. The information, we also discussed that information is centralized. Once data has been assigned to a particular level, it cannot be removed. The privacy, we saw that data is manually set by the administrator over there, so there is no automatic the control. So therefore it's the no one other than the admins can make any changes to the list of users who will access to the any type of level. Only the administrators are able to make these type of changes. So these are some of the benefits. Higher level data protection, most secure system among roles, mandatory and discretionary system. With MAC, one can be sure, centralized information, privacy. Disadvantages. So let's look at the some of the disadvantages. So there are three: careful setting up process. System cannot be rolled out before this set. So it's not like you just started a system, you implemented a basic type of DSC or role base, and then you keep making changes on the fly or on a need basis. So this is not how things work in MSc. In MSc, it requires a careful planning during the setup, during the commissioning process. So before the system could be commissioned using the Mac, it needs to be fully functional, no loopholes, all the checks in place, all the labels, security classification, user assignment to the classification, all type of data that needs to be protected is catered for before this type of system could be commissioned. So this that therefore there is an extreme caution required during the setting up process, because failing to do so in a correct manner will result in unorganized work, loopholes. There could be instances where a piece of information has to be communicated among co-workers in the same company, but Mac may forbids that because of the no sharing of information between different type of levels, but particularly if those are the higher levels to the lower levels. Regular update required. That's another disadvantage of the Mac based access control. Mac has to be updated on frequent basis, more frequently as compared to DSC and the role base, where you just needs to check the role granularities or the access matrices, or just you need to review the logs that everything is in place. Here we need to have the regular updates. So whenever there is a new data that's added, once the old data are removed, again the security system administrators are responsible for periodic reviews, giving the Mac systems and the associated conditions, like the, because then as we discussed, the verifier or the authenticator in this case needs to verify those conditions. So in updates that we need to see that. And the third disadvantage of the Mac is the lack of flexibility. These systems do not have any type of flexibility in their daily operations. Because the first is the process of getting all the data, creation of all the ACLs, that will not cause any problems. There will not be any future. So therefore, it's less flexible. And if there is some type of data sharing required, generally these type of systems are not very flexible in terms of the data sharing. We saw in the role base it's possible with the help of constraints and hierarchies. There is sharing of data. We also saw that in DSC based systems it's much easier to provide that type of sharing, but generally the Mac based system discourage sharing between systems. So here are the disadvantages that we just discussed: careful setting up process, good care, otherwise it will make working chaotic. It because sometimes the piece of information need to be shared. We discussed that. Regular update required. It requires updating when the new data is added. Lack of flexibility. is another concern in the Mac based systems over there. So before we compare the MAC and DAC based on their characteristics, let's also see that the Mac is used in which type of situations, like when to use the Mac. We briefly discussed already that it could be used in defense organizations, military, governmental organizations. It could also be used there in businesses that places a higher priority on data security, like their IP property, intellectual property, that do not have any flexibility and expenses of their operations. So basically, in that case, the sharing is not required, and there is highly sensitive intellectual property values. In that case, Mac could be used because it provides the higher level of security, exclusive access, at the cost of. So there is a trade-off. The trade-off is the higher setting up, the complex setting up process, and the updates required and so on. So basically, there is a trade-off, and therefore the Mac is not used alone. So basically, for it's combined with other type of access control approaches where it's the for the normal type of normal functioning of the data where there is not, which is not very sensitive and not very high level of access is required. In those cases, the role based or DSC based approaches, the discretionary access control based approaches can be used, and whenever there is a higher level data, so it's basically it can be combined with other type of systems. And so let's now look at the comparison. The comparison is the access control enforced by the in DSC, the administrator and users. And as we discussed, the users are the owner and they set permission, the access matrix, basically users, group, and the rest of the world, as we saw in the Unix, and it's also we are doing it in the lab as well. And in the Mac, it's administrator and operating system, basically the security team who sets up the access control approaches. Next, a form of access control is the confidentiality levels and the clearance levels in MAC or Mac, whereas the access matrices, ACLs with the user identities, where we saw different type of approaches yesterday, that how the DSC is implemented using the DSC is much more flexible. MAC is not, because it does not support sharing. Updates are required. A lot of setting up process. It's not scalable. Basically, DSC is much more scalable than the Mac lacks in scalability. It's not simple because the whole system view, the holistic view must be before the system administrators, before they can do anything, make any changes, assign users to those clearance levels and so on. Whereas in DSC, it's much simple. Maintenance is hard because of all these limitations that we discussed in MAC, whereas DSC is much easy to maintain. Implementation cost high because of the resources needed to understand. You cannot have the for the admin team, all the skills are required. So basically, they need to understand the functionality of the organization, their dealings, and how the data classification is done, in addition to the normal mighty level, the security level skills they possess. So basically, it's a combination of, it's a whole array of skills that they possess to implement these type of systems. Where DSC, it could be just even now with the basic understanding and with the some practice, and you can easily do the DSC base with only the beginners, the entry level system security administrators can are trained to do DSC, because that's the first one and basic and minimal one required to implement the access control. Granularity, both MSC and DSC offers high level of granularity. Users can assist access rights for any other user or group, but those tables, we saw some of the implementation approaches yesterday, those tables can become large. There is a troubleshooting problem in those cases over there. And here the admin can adjust clearance levels for each user and object manually, but it requires a lot of time. Although the granularity is high, but the cost and the work required behind those type of approaches is much more difficult in the MSC. MSC is not easier to use as compared to DSC. DSC, we saw that with just some commands you can set up those permissions and that's it. You can control all those accesses. But here it's not easier. Security level, it provides much higher level of security, MSC, whereas the DSC security is low. It's useful for MSC is useful for government or military law enforcement, where there is sensitive data. Even the hospitals can also use the MSC based systems, whereas the small and any small and medium sized company where there is no requirement to protect the sensitive data. So basically the normal access control is required. So as I said, this is the one of the basic level of the access control. Trusted users, MSC only administrators are trusted. The other users can only execute permissions, whereas the all users are trusted in that sense that they, if they have something, some content they have created, they can set permissions on that. So basically they can grant permissions, they can use, they can revoke permissions, they can expand those permission sets from the self to the user to the group to the rest of the world, whereas the no such because the owners have no access, basically no, you cannot change that permission. So only the administrators can grant, revoke by changing the security levels, so they can adjust those security levels. The baseline for gaining access decisions, ownership is the baseline. That's very important over here, and user IDs. The in this case, the ownership, it's the based on the user IDs, whichever user is there. For example, you can define group of users and change their permissions accordingly. Here we have only the data. So basically the tasks and objects, they have their own ID. For example, there is a piece of paper, so there is a report, sensitive report that needs to be protected, so that the unique user ID will be created for that. System administrators will take care of assigning it to appropriate level of the security clearance, and then users will be assigned to that clearance level. So in that case, it's the data that matters. And then the security level, for example, secret, top secret, and confidential, and so on. Here it's the ownership that matters, because owners control everything. Here the nature of the data, and then combined with the systems and administrators, they control access to the system. Okay, so that's the conclusion of the MSc. We saw that MSc based systems, it limits the capacity of individual resource owners to grant or deny access to the resources inside a file system, in order to prevent unauthorized access to the system. So the amount of the sensitivity, or the clearance level of information included in a resource, and user authorization to accept that information will come with that sensitivity level. And then we also saw in today's lecture that in MSc, basically both factors are taken into account: the user's authorization level based on their ownership to a particular group, and then also the nature of the data, the object that needs to be protected. So that's why it provides much higher level of security. We saw what are the benefits and the disadvantages of these type of systems. We also compared it with the DSC based systems, where we saw that the one fundamental difference is in terms of the ownership and the who can change and who can assign users in the DSC and MSC. It has some similarities with the roles, but in RBSC system we saw that there are constraints. One user could be assigned to multiple roles, and there is a sharing possible among roles over there. But if we compare RBSC with MAC, then the sharing is only possible with the one security level. It cannot be done beyond that. That's it for today. In the next lecture, we'll discuss the attribute based access control. That's the last type of the access control approach that we'll discuss in this course. Thank you.